Greetings, Pokefans! Michael here, and out of all the Pokemon professors, Professor Kukui is the most impressive in regards to battle prowess. And also abs. He is the final main story battle in Pokemon Sun and Moon, a title defense competitor in all 4 of the Alola games, a battle tree partner in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and appears in the upper levels of the Battle Royales as the Masked Royale. He's very clearly an extremely competent battler, and this got me thinking, what if all of the professors were on the same level as Kukui? Today, I'm going to be going through all of the main series Pokemon game professors and giving them teams that I think they should have, or at least I would like to see them have if they were the champion, or a high-level trainer on the level of the champion. I'm going to be doing this for all of the primary professors of the main series games, but also a couple other Pokemon researchers that are prominent. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Seriously, you should do it. I'm making an emphasis on it, it's important. And let's dive in to what the teams would be for every professor if they were the champion. Let's of course start with Professor Oak. And fun fact, he may have originally been intended to be a champion. In the code of the Gen 1 games, Professor Oak has 3 teams of Pokemon. The difference between the 3 being which starter he has. This battle is not accessible without using glitches, but since these Pokemon are both higher level than your rival in the league and have a lot of overlap with his team, this seems to suggest that he was originally intended to be the final boss, and they just didn't scrub his team completely from the code. This makes it pretty easy to fill out the first few members of his team. Tauros, Arcanine, Exeggutor, and Gyarados, and then would be the rotating starter, the one weak to the one that you pick. This is the starter that is left at the lab. You take yours, your rival takes the one strong against yours, and then Professor Oak is left with the one weak to yours. This is kinda like the reverse of what happens with Kukui and Leon. You take your starter, your rival, How or Hop, takes the one weak to yours, and then Kukui and Leon are left with the one strong against yours. For the final Pokemon, I considered giving him a Rotom because he has one in the anime, but I'd prefer to give him just Gen 1 Pokemon. I also could have given him a Pidgeot or a Dragonite due to him being seen with a Pidgey and a Dragonite very briefly in the anime, but I'm not going with them because there's another Pokemon that I think fits better. In the opening sequence for Red and Blue, you witness a Gengar facing off against a Nidorino in red and a Jigglypuff in blue. This face-off returns in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but this time both versions have Nidorino. Years ago, a Reddit user theorized that this sequence is intended to be a battle between Professor Oak and Agatha, who we know were rivals in their younger days. The Gengar is supposedly Agatha's, a Pokemon she still uses in her old age, and the other Pokemon is Oak's. More recently in Pokemon Masters, Oak is shown to have a Nidorino, which he then later uses to battle Agatha. This basically confirms the theory that it's Agatha's Gengar versus Oak's Nidorino, or Jigglypuff in blue, especially since Oak also shows off his Nidorino in the new game intro. So while I could give him Wigglytuff, he's seen with Nidorino a lot more. Therefore, the logical 6th Pokemon is Nidoking, since it should be fully evolved if he's champion level. Before I move on to the next professor, I want to remind you that my first ever Hail Yeah merch is currently available. I'm super excited. I really love this design. I've been saying this phrase all year and I finally got it on merch, but it will only be available for a very limited time, just a few more days as of posting this video. So if you want to get one before it's gone forever, head to the link in the description below. Quickly, with urgency, go, go, go. Next is Professor Elm, the Johto professor. In the main series games, he is never seen with a Pokemon aside from the starters that he gives out, but that's the case for basically all of the professors. In the anime, he is shown to own a Corsola, but that's all we have for him. But he does have a theme that I can use to fill out the rest of his team. Professor Elm's research specialty is Pokemon breeding, so I think it would make sense if his champion team was filled out by the fully evolved form of baby Pokemon from Gen 2. So first would be the Corsola, then Togetic because Togepi is the most famous baby Pokemon, Hitmontop because it's the only Johto evolution of a Johto baby Pokemon, Tyrogue, then Jynx, Electabuzz, and Magmar. Evolutions of baby Pokemon that I think were fair to create. What I mean by this is that I think it's ridiculous to give baby forms to Pokemon that are already weak. Like the Hitmons are base forms that are strong, so you make a weaker form, Tyrogue. Makes sense. But Pichu, Igglybuff, and Cleffa are weaker versions of already weak Pokemon. So I don't think they should have been made at all. Well, except Pichu. It can stay because it's extremely cute, but I'm still not giving it to Elm. So this is Elm's team in Gen 2, but if it were Gen 4, Togetic, Electabuzz, and Magmar would be in their new final evolved forms. Togekiss, Electivire, and Magmortar. Next is the Hoenn Professor, Professor Birch. Now he doesn't have any Pokemon that are explicitly his, so we're gonna have to get a bit creative. First would be Azumarill and Ludicolo. Birch sends out and shows off an Azurill in the intro sequence of Ruby and Sapphire, and then in Emerald, it's a Lotad. Since Oak shows off a Nidorino in the intro sequence and then is later confirmed to own a Nidorino, I think it's fair to say that any Pokemon the professors send out in the new game sequence is one that belongs to them. Next would be Mightyena and Linoone, the evolved forms of the Pokemon that attack him at the start of the Hoenn games. Zigzagoon in Emerald and Poochyena in all of the others. I like to think that he stopped being such a wimp and befriended the Pokemon that tried to nibble on him. As for the last two Pokemon, I can fill it out using the same thing I did for Elm, looking at Birch's research specialty. His research specialty is Pokemon habitats. His whole thing is that he prefers to be out in the field studying Pokemon rather than inside his lab, which makes his choice in footwear strange. He really should be wearing closed-toed shoes. So for his entire team, I'm going to have them represent the different biomes of the Hoenn region. Azumarill and Ludicolo already represent the aquatic biomes of rivers, lakes, and the ocean. Mightyena and Linoone already represent the grassland and forest areas. The last two Pokemon I'm giving him are Flygon for the desert and Torkoal for the volcanic areas. There are definitely more Pokemon from other biomes I could have selected, like Aggron for the caves or Tropius from the tropical routes, but I went with Flygon for the desert and Torkoal for the volcano because the Route 111 Desert and Mount Chimney are the first desert and volcano ever in the main series Pokemon games, so I figured they should be acknowledged because of that. Next up is the Sinnoh Professor, Professor Rowan. Rowan. I don't know. First would be Snorlax and Lopunny, since he shows off Munchlax in the intro of Diamond and Pearl and Baniri in the intro of Platinum. But aside from those two, he doesn't have any other Pokemon. Well, in the anime, he had some Starly and a Staraptor in his lab, but those weren't explicitly his. He was just kind of studying them, so I don't think that should count. So once again, I'm going to fill out the rest of his team by using his research specialty. And Rowan's or whatever is Pokemon evolution. Generation 4 introduced a lot of evolutions for older generation Pokemon, so why not fill out the rest of his team with new evolution Pokemon? I'm filling it out with Gliscor, Gallade, Mamoswine, and Yanmega. Not a whole lot of deep reasoning behind this squad besides picking ones I like that I didn't already give to Elm. Next up is the Unova Professor, Professor Juniper. First she'd have Cinccino, since she shows off Minccino in the Black and White intro, and then shows off a Cinccino in the Black 2 and White 2 intro, showing that it evolved in the time frame between the games. Then would be Watchog, since she uses her Minccino to catch a Patrat in the catching tutorial in Black and White. Next would be Excelgor, a Pokemon she obtained by doing the Karrablast Shelmet trade in the anime. After that, I'm going to give her Pokemon that she discusses in the games. Her research specialty is the origin of Pokemon, and she talks about a couple Pokemon that have interesting origins. First is Klinklang, since she talks about how Klink suddenly appeared 100 years ago. Next is Darmanitan, since she talks about how the Zen mode once have been in the desert for 2,500 years. Finally would be Sigilyph. She never explicitly mentions it, but its backstory of flying the same path to continuously guard an ancient city that's no longer there sounds like something that would be right up her alley. So that covers Professor Juniper, the primary professor of the Unova region. However, Unova has several other notable researchers that I think are notable enough to warrant getting their own champion teams. First up is Professor Aria Juniper's father, Cedric Juniper. He's a retired researcher that now just kind of jaunts around upgrading your national Pokedex and stuff like that. He doesn't have any canonical Pokemon. However, he does give the player the Super Rod in Black 2 and White 2. It's the only fishing rod in the game, so clearly he's an expert fisherman, so his team should all be Pokemon that he fished up. Those would be Kingdra, Basculin, Milotic, Politoed, Crawdaunt, and Dragonite. And yes, you can fish up Dragonite outside the Dragon Spiral Tower. Not all of these are in the Unova Pokedex, but the fishing rod isn't obtained until after you get the national dex anyways. Another notable Unova researcher is Fennel, who focuses on Pokemon Dreams and the Dream World. In the Dream World demo, she has a Munna, and then in the anime, she has a Munna and a Musharna. So clearly, Musharna is her ace. As for the rest of her team, I'm just gonna pick some Pokemon from the Black 2, White 2 Unova Pokedex that have something to do with sleep. In full, her team would be the Musharna, followed by Ampharos because of counting sheep, Slacking because, obviously, Altaria for sleeping on clouds, Umbreon because it represents nighttime, and Wigglytuff because it would make a great pillow. Apparently it has really soft, nice fur. Also, I totally would have given her a Snorlax, but it's not in the Unova Dex. The final Unova researcher is Colress. Now, he's originally an antagonist working with Team Plasma in Black 2 and White 2, but he eventually leaves Team Plasma and ends up hating it.
You should have no reason to meddle in my plans. Oh, please. I simply despise you, Ghetsis. That's enough reason for me! Oh!
So now he's basically just an independent professor, which is good enough for me to include him in this video. I can first fill out his team with his Black 2 White 2 post-game rematch team. Klinklang, Metagross, Magnezone, Beheeyem, Rotom-Wash, and Magneton. However, I'd prefer he not have repeats, so if limited to the Black 2 White 2 Pokedex, I'd swap out the Magneton for Muck, since he uses Alolan Muck in the Gen 7 battle tree. But that finally wraps up Unova, so now we can move on to the Kalos region, the main professor being Professor Sycamore. And fun fact, he is the only professor that you can battle against besides Kukui and the glitch battle against Oak. So his team I can take at least partially from his actual in-game battling team. His final in-game team is the 3 Kanto starters, Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise. After that, I'd give him Go-Goat, since he sends out a Skiddo in the intro of X and Y. Then would be Garchomp, since he has one in the anime. And then finally, I'd give him Manectric. He specializes in Mega Evolution, and 4 of his 5 Pokemon so far can Mega Evolve. It makes sense for his last one to be another Mega Evolving Pokemon that doesn't cause a type overlap. And now we move on to the professor who inspired this video, Kukui, and his teams are pretty obviously already fleshed out. His title defense team in all of the Alola games is Midday Lycanroc, Alola Ninetales, Braviary, Magnezone, Snorlax, and a rotating starter, the one that's strong against yours. In the anime he has Incineroar though, so I kind of think that one should be his de facto starter. He also uses a Crabominable and a Midnight Lycanroc in the battle tree, and he has Venusaur, Empoleon, and Lucario in the anime, so I could have used those Pokemon too. However, I'm picking his team as if he were champion, and I think it just makes sense to go with the team that he used in the champion battle. Next would be Kukui's wife, Professor Burnett. Now, she is not the main professor of Alola, obviously, but she is explicitly referred to as Professor Burnett, so she definitely counts here. She mainly focuses on the relationship between Pokemon and alternate dimensions, so if she were to ascend to the level of champion, I think she'd roll with a squad of Ultra Beasts. The 6 I would give her would be Naganadel, Stakataka, Blacephalon, Guzzlord, Pheromosa, and Celesteela. This is probably the most broken team in the video, but Professor Burnett is awesome, so she deserves it. Finally, for the Alola region is Alolan Oak, Professor Samson Oak. And he's in kind of a weird situation. In Sun and Moon, he studies regional variants. Yet in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, he studies totem Pokemon. So because of this alternate universe difference, I gotta give him 2 different teams. His Sun and Moon team would be made up of Alola forms, Alolan Marowak, Exeggutor, Muck, Golem, Dugtrio, and Ninetales. His Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon team would be made up of some of the totem Pokemon he gives away, Alolan Raticate, Araquanid, Salazzle, Togedemaru, Mimikyu, and Kamo-o, all very large. He also has a Cantonian Vulpix and a Komala in the anime, but I just don't think those fit as well for one of his in-game teams. Next is Professor Magnolia, who might be the least involved primary professor in any main series game. Not only does she not even remain the professor throughout the entire story, retiring after you become champion, but she is also the only professor in main series history who is professor at the start of the game to not give you a starter Pokemon at any point. Leon is the one who gives you your starter in Sword and Shield. Magnolia also does not appear in the intro of the game. Instead, it's that sequence with Rose and his Cufant, and her appearances in the anime are extremely brief so far, and she hasn't been shown with any Pokemon. That means she has no canonical Pokemon for me to go off of at all. So her entire team is gonna be based on her research specialty, which is Dynamax. So I'm just gonna give her a team of 6 Pokemon that can Gigantamax, because Gigantamax is fancy Dynamax. That team is Corviknight, Orbeetle, Dreadnought, Sandaconda, Toxtricity, and Copperajah, all Gen 8 Pokemon with little to no type overlap. Of all of these, I think Corviknight would be her ace, since her cane appears to have a Corviknight on it. Then finally is Sonia, who becomes professor in the post-game of Sword and Shield. Her research specialty is Galar's history, which unfortunately doesn't really help me here. I can't really give her Zacian, Zamazenta, or Eternatus. Her only canonical Pokemon is Yamper, but we do know that she participated in the gym challenge when she was younger and just never finished it. Therefore, we can assume that at one point she had a team of Pokemon that you could find on a journey throughout the Galar region. So I'm just gonna give her a team of Galar Pokedex Pokemon that I think would fit. A team that she would have in an alternate universe where instead of Leon becoming champion, she did. First would be Boltund, her Yamper evolved. Next, I'd give her Ninetales, Noivern, Runerigus, Zarina, and Gigantamax Blastoise. This selection is mostly random, except for G-Max Blastoise. If she were to defeat Leon, having the type advantage Gigantamax Kanto starter is how she'd do it. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to pick up a Hail Yeah shirt before it is gone. Seriously, it ain't coming back. Link is in the description below. Also, a huge thank you to my patrons who are supporting me on Patreon, which helps during times when ad rates fluctuate a lot. If you want to support me in the same way, the link is in the description below. If you want to check out some more of my fun content, I recommend these videos here. All right, that's all I have for now. So until next time, big fans, gotta catch them all.